Deep within an enchanted forest, nestled between the willow trees and the bubbling brook, stood a little shop with a big heart. It was called the Bear's Sweet Shop. The shop had a bright red door and a cheerful chimney that puffed out sugary smoke. All sorts of wonderful smells wafted from the windows. Creatures from all over the forest, from the tiniest mouse to the tallest giraffe, would come to visit. They knew that at the Bear's Sweet Shop, a warm welcome and a sweet treat awaited them. The shop was a place of joy where friends were made and worries were forgotten. The Bear's Sweet Shop was more than just a place to buy sweets. It was a place where everyone felt loved and cared for. The animals of the forest knew that the shop was special, but they didn't know all of its secrets. Only the shop owner, a kind and gentle bear named Benny, knew the magic that went into every single treat. Benny the bear was a big, fluffy bear with a heart as sweet as honey. He loved to bake, and he loved to share his treats with everyone. Benny had soft brown fur, twinkling black eyes, and a big, warm smile. He always wore a baker's hat with a jaunty red feather. Benny wasn't just any baker. He had a special talent. Benny could make the most amazing sweets the forest had ever tasted. His peppermint swirls made your head spin, in a good way. His strawberry lollipops tasted like a summer day, and his honey cakes were simply divine. Every morning, Benny would wake up early, put on his baker's hat, and start baking. He mixed and stirred, baked and cooled, all the while humming a happy tune. Benny put his heart into every single treat he made, but there was one secret ingredient that made Benny's sweets extra special. The animals of the forest often wondered what made Benny's sweets so delicious. Some thought it was his grandma's secret recipe, others thought it was the magical oven he used. But the truth was much simpler. Benny's secret ingredient was kindness. Benny believed that when you put love and kindness into what you make, it shows. He treated everyone who walked through his door with a smile and a kind word. He never rushed his customers and always listened to their stories. He baked every treat with the intention of making someone's day a little brighter. Benny's kindness filled the shop like a warm hug, making it the most inviting place in the forest. The animals could taste the love in every bite of his sweets. That's what made them so special. One sunny morning, Benny woke up with a start. He realized he was completely out of his most important ingredient, honey. Benny used honey in almost all his treats. It gave them the perfect touch of sweetness. Without honey, he couldn't bake. Benny scratched his head. What was he going to do? He had promised Mrs. Squirrel a batch of honey cookies for her tea party, and he couldn't disappoint her. Benny knew he had to find more honey, and fast. Determined to solve the problem, Benny put on his best walking shoes and set off into the forest. He was a little scared, but mostly excited for an adventure. He knew that somewhere in the vast forest, there had to be a hive filled with delicious honey, just waiting to be found. Benny followed a winding path deeper and deeper into the forest. The trees grew taller and the shadows grew longer. Benny had never ventured this far from his shop before. He felt a little bit lost, but he kept going. He had to find that honey. As he walked, Benny met all sorts of creatures. He saw a family of deer grazing by the river. He heard the cheerful chirping of birds in the trees. He even crossed paths with a grumpy badger who grumbled at him to watch where he was going. Each time Benny met someone, he would ask them if they knew where to find honey. Some shook their heads, some pointed him in the right direction. Benny was grateful for their help, even if it wasn't always useful. He was starting to lose hope, but he kept reminding himself that he couldn't give up. Just when Benny was about to turn back, he spotted a wise old owl perched on a branch above him. The owl had big, round eyes and a serious expression. Benny had heard that owls were very smart and knew a lot about the forest. "Excuse me, Mr. Owl," Benny called out politely. "Do you know where I can find some honey? I've run out and I need some for my sweets." The owl looked down at Benny with a thoughtful expression. He hooted softly and said, "Honey you seek, little bear? A noble quest indeed. Follow the stream eastward, young one. There you shall find what you seek." Benny was so happy he could have hugged the owl. "Thank you, Mr. Owl. You're a lifesaver," he exclaimed. Benny hurried off in the direction the owl had pointed him. He was so grateful for the wise owl's help. Following the stream, Benny soon came across a clearing bathed in sunlight. In the middle of the clearing stood the biggest, most beautiful beehive he had ever seen. It buzzed with activity as bees flew in and out, their tiny wings humming a happy tune. Benny was a little scared to approach the bees. He had been stung once before and it hadn't been pleasant, but he knew he needed their honey. Taking a deep breath, Benny called out in his friendliest voice, "Hello, my name is Benny and I'm a baker. I was hoping you could spare some of your delicious honey. I promise to use it to make the tastiest treats in the forest." To Benny's surprise, the bees didn't sting him. Instead, they buzzed gently around him as if to greet him. One bee, larger than the others and with a crown on its head, flew up to Benny. "This must be the queen bee," Benny thought. "You are Benny the bear?" the queen bee buzzed. "We have heard of your kindness. We know you use your baking to spread joy throughout the forest. We would be honored to share our honey with you." Benny couldn't believe his ears. The bees were going to share their honey with him. He was overjoyed. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said to the queen bee. "You won't regret this. I promise to use your honey to make the most delicious treats the forest has ever tasted." The bees filled Benny's pot to the brim with their golden honey. Benny thanked the bees over and over again. He promised to visit them again soon. He skipped all the way back to his shop, his heart overflowing with happiness. As promised, Benny used the bees' honey to bake the most delicious batch of treats the forest had ever tasted. He made honey cakes for the queen bee and her hive and delivered them personally. He baked a mountain of honey cookies for Mrs. Squirrel's tea party, which were a roaring success. Benny's honey never ran out again. The bees kept him well supplied, and in return, Benny shared his delicious treats with them. The bear's sweet shop was busier than ever. Animals from all over the forest came to taste Benny's honey-sweetened delights. Benny's story teaches us that kindness is the sweetest ingredient of all. When we are kind to others, we spread joy and happiness wherever we go. And just like Benny discovered, when we share our gifts with the world, we receive sweetness in return.